UCONN is rolling along, trying to defend the national title, 18-2 in the Big East. We know how great that conference was, and they are hammering people in the tournament so far. And, of course, joined by Dave Borges of CT Insider, covers UConn with us on 365 Sports. It's not like the entire season's been easy because they have a couple of losses that were one-sided. But, Dave, for the most part, has this not been a cakewalk but a pretty simple year for them? It's just a matter of them now peaking at the right time?
It's been pretty amazing. Yeah, they won it all last year, of course, and you can make the argument that they've been better, even better this year. They last year they went through a stretch in January where they lost 6 out of 8 games. This year, at one point they went 2 months without losing. So they've lost 3 games, 2 of them in conference, one of them at Kansas by 4 points, which is always a tough place to play, and they had some injury issues as well. So it's been like you said, nothing's easy, especially in the Big East, but they've kind of made it look easy for most of the season.
Dave, last year, after they win, you kind of look back and go, "Oh, they were a 1 seed that was masquerading as a lower seed because of January and all that went down." This year, there's no masquerade anymore, like you just mentioned. How much of that was just built off the momentum of winning and knowing that they could do it and not really being afraid of anybody anymore?
Yeah, I think when you make a run like they did, when winning their 6 tournament games by an average of 20 points, all by double digits. And then I think that obviously you win a championship, you have a lot of confidence. But they lost a lot of good players to graduation and to the NBA. So, the returning players certainly had a lot of confidence. But you have, 5 really good freshmen coming in and a transfer, a couple of transfers, one in particular, Cam Spencer, who came from Rutgers, obviously not really a winning tradition. He played at Loyola Maryland before that. So the returning guys had confidence, but you had some new guys to intermingle with them. And it's all worked out very well. It's just worked out better than anyone could have expected, except maybe Dan Hurley.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about him. How would you describe him as a coach, a personality with UConn?
I'd say complicated. He's you see him on the sidelines, and that's just the way he's going to be. You're not going to unring that bell. That's just the way he is. I think the way he goes after the refs, it's just he can't stop that. But the thing is, his teammates, the players love him. He's great to them, and he's very tough in practices, but he's their best friend during games. Kind of the opposite of Jim Calhoun in that sense. And he's just a quirky guy, but he's certainly not a bad guy. But some of the complaining that he does publicly about, I think he's trying to keep this team on edge because everything has come so easily to them, at least apparently easy. I mean, like I said, nothing's easy, but they've made it look so easy that he has to keep finding ways to get a chip on their shoulder, whether it's the selection committee giving them a tough draw or whether it's, now he's complaining that they had to play Sunday night and now they have to be in Boston on Tuesday. Well, it's not exactly a long way to go. he finds these things to keep his team on edge and to make an us against the world mentality, and it works.
Yeah, he's not riding it on a horse like Paul Revere did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's not how he's going. Dave, Tristan Newton's been fantastic this year. He's certainly raised his profile even more. Does the team, though, I mean, they've got a diverse scoring, but do they kind of go, though, as he goes?
Yeah, you can definitely say that. Now, he's terrific. He probably should have been Big East Player of the Year. He's a first-team All-American. He doesn't. You watch him play. He's not like a spectacular player. He's a good shooter, not a great shooter, but he does everything. He's got 4 career triple doubles, which is the most in UConn history, and he's only been there 2 seasons. Overall, he's their best, most important player. But I think if you look at Donovan Clingan, the 7'2" center, he's the guy that kind of is probably the most impactful guy on the team in the sense that his mere presence on the court, whether he's blocking shots or not, it intimidates and it influences other shots and forces teams to shoot more threes and not go into the lane. So Tristan's incredibly important. You know, 2 of his biggest games of the year have been in 2 of UConn's losses. So that's not really anything against Tristan, but I think if you look at the guy who really is the most important player, you can make an argument that it's Donovan Clingan.
So if you were to say they have an Achilles or they have any kind of potential weakness or have shown that, what would it be, if anything?
You know, it's a really good question. I've tried to think of one myself. I mean, you know, they haven't shot. The foul shooting has been occasionally not great, including Clingan, who has a really good-looking stroke but only shoots about 55%. And then if you can get the big guys, Clingan and his backup, Samson Johnson, in foul trouble, that can give UConn some problems because it takes away that, that defensive advantage they have in the middle and makes them a different team. There have been games where they've struggled rebounding a little bit, but the thing is there's so much depth. Five starters who average in double figures, 2 or 3 guys off the bench who can also do the same. It's hard you really have to get a lot of guys having a bad night at the same time. So, yeah, I don't think there's any real necessary weaknesses, but like I said, try to get some of the guys in foul trouble, particularly the bigs. And at times, rebounding and free throw shooting have been a little bit of an issue for them.
When you saw the bracket come out, obviously UConn, a 1 seed and a favorite by a lot of people. It's more people for them than pretty much anybody else. Did you see the potential rematch of the national championship game with San Diego State being in this round? I mean, it's going to be in this round, but did you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, no, I did because I thought, I wasn't high on Auburn and Yale. I thought Yale could beat them, and they did. And then, you got San Diego State, Yale, and certainly as great a season as Yale had, San Diego State was predictably the better team. So I thought there was a good chance we could have that rematch. And it's going to be interesting because the teams are different than last year, but there's also some sameness in both teams and certainly some familiarity, obviously.
So go ahead, Paul.
After last year, what was the NIL inflection like to keep this group mostly together?
Well, they're doing well NIL-wise. I know that, they don't obviously have to divulge the exact figures. I know Clingan in particular, because he's a local guy too. So he's got a lot of local, advertising and things like that. His billboard is on the main highway here for advertising a product. I forget which one, but I've heard he's potentially up in 7 figures in terms of the NIL stuff. The other guys are doing well. They've got some initiatives that are doing very well, much better than most of their Big East rivals. And since UConn football is kind of not really a thing. I mean, it is a thing, but it hasn't been very good. A lot of the NIL money, emphasis is on men's and women's basketball.
Well, yeah, with what Gino's done, and they've got Beckers and all the others that look like they're back on a pretty good roll. So the Big East, 3-0, all 3 teams are still alive, 6-0 through the first couple of rounds. The ACC's 8-0 through the first couple of rounds, and there was a lot of talk about what the Big 12 was, and they were really good. It was a battering ram, but you look up, and there's some conferences with 2 and this and that, but there's the Big East at 3-0. How much of a drive is that to have that so-called, as you mentioned, chip on their shoulder because of it? Because obviously Hurley's brought that up before.
Yeah, I think the entire conference, everyone associated with it was upset that the league only got 3 bids. I think there's no question in my mind, they should have got at least 5, 4 or 5. I think 5 would have worked. 6 would have been fair. Also, I think St. John scored 90 points on UConn in the Big East tournament, and there's no doubt in my mind that with Rick Pitino there and with some of the talent they have, they could have won a couple of games in this tournament. So I think it's a big thing. Dan is very supportive of his fellow Big East teams and coaches, and I think there's a lot of incentive for the league to get as many teams as they can. I mean, in theory, they could get 3 of the Final 4 teams. I think that's unlikely, but I think you could see 2 of half the Final 4 field as Big East teams. I felt the Big 12 has been the best league in the country for the past 5 years or so. But I think you can make the argument that maybe this year, certainly not, the depth part of it was a problem for the Big East, but I think maybe overall the Big East had the better league this year.
All right, so Dave, and we might have had you on when this was going on a couple of years ago with all the national realignment. Conferences are now splintered. Some are almost all but gone, and some are now big, fat, like ticks on a dog in the summertime. And there was some, at least at times, some thoughts that Brett Yormark wanted to expand the Big 12 because of basketball with Gonzaga. UConn was brought up. Football, not really. That didn't go over very well, and you mentioned a little bit about where they are with football. Was that, or is that still any kind of a thing down the road, you think, with UConn and the Big 12 in basketball?
Well, if they're invited, they would join. There's no question in my mind. Now, I don't think they would just be invited for basketball. I think it would have to be for everything. I mean, they might get invited just for basketball, but I don't know if they would do that. Because football is important for a lot of reasons. And now, does the Big 12 want them for football? I don't think so, but certainly would it obviously enhance an already very good basketball league. So it's quieted down. It was very close, I'm told, over the summer. It really was close to happening. And it would have been obviously a travel, I won't say nightmare, but a lot of logistical problems traveling-wise for UConn. But it would have been more than made up for, I suppose, in the TV and football type money they would have had coming in. So now, look, the ACC is a much better fit. Even the Big Ten is a better fit. So if one of these leagues, and who knows what's going to happen, maybe it comes down to just a Power 2, Power 3 situation, but if one of these leagues ends up inviting UConn, they're gone in a drop of a hat.
Dave, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Dave Borges with us, the Hart Connecticut Media, UC Insider with us on Connecticut, and appreciate his time on a lot of stuff, UConn. And, yeah, he